Hi there. Today I'm going to show you this amazing technique for decorating paper. It's created, all these patterns are created by, as you can kind of see, by folding in an intricate fold and then dipping the paper in colors and then unfolding. So it's a messy technique. It's hard to repeat, but you come up with some amazing designs. So we'll put that aside and show you what you need. It's fairly simple. The most specific thing you need is the rice paper. It's best to just look online for it or go to your local art store. If you have a local art store, please go to them and they probably have it in some form or other. Sometimes it's in sheets in a package, sometimes it's a roll. It can be more or less expensive depending on what it is. My paper, the reason you need rice paper is because it's quite absorbent. You can paint on any paper, but for this you're going to fold it and you want the dye to just soak right up into the paper. So it has to be absorbent, which means it can't have too much coating on it. A lot of paper has coating. Paper for some drawing or pastels might be just too stiff. It has to be kind of soft so you can easily fold it and absorbent. So rice paper fits the bill. Mine is very fine. You could use a heavier one for sure, a slightly thicker one. I wouldn't go too heavy, as you'll probably see, because you're going to fold it a lot. So rice paper, a bit of newsprint to just dab the wet folded paper on, and a very simple tool. When you've got a little folded package, you need to hold on to it with something to dip it in the dyes. You can use your hands, but you'll get very messy. So a little pair of pliers. They can be a bigger pair if you're folding bigger folds. Something to grab the paper and dip it. And then the dye. The simplest thing to use is food color. And food color works amazingly well. I mean, it's not that cheap in a way, but it's a good way to try it out and see if you like the process. You can just go to any grocery store and get food color. If you like, you can also use silk dyes. I also paint silk, so I have a lot of silk dye. The one I like, the one that's really appropriate and is not as expensive as some, is called Liquid Colors. It's from G&S Dye in Toronto. You can order it online. Silk dye, I'm calling it silk dye. It's actually silk paint. But it's not paint as you would normally think of it. It's a thin paint, sort of like an ink, but it's very opaque. When I don't get mixed up in, for instance, you can get a Pebeo brand of silk paint, but they have a thick paint, which is called Cetacolor, and that's like an acrylic. That's not what you need. Ceta Silk. It's specifically designed to paint on silk because it flows into the silk. So try food color or silk paint. The one difference is that silk paint is probably a little more, fixes better. Isn't quite as quick to run if you, say, want to coat it with something, but try either one. And they both work beautifully. They both have good colors. So we just grab one piece. I would say start with a smaller piece just to try it out. I'll get my piece ready and let's begin. So the first thing we do, we take the rice paper, and I would start with a small piece like this. It's about 7 by 7 inches. We're going to make one fold, and I usually make it about 3/4 of an inch to an inch wide, and then you're going to accordion fold it. So you have to fold one way and then you fold the other way. The accordion folds helps the dye get in evenly to all the layers. Plus it allows you to do a more exact folding. If you were to fold over and over like that, you just can't be exact with the fold. And so this is always how fold and dye is done. You fold it accordion wise. So we fold it again, just keep going until you come to the end. Sorry if that was a bit confusing to look at. I knocked the camera with my head and I didn't want to do the whole video over again. So I paused it. Okay, so we have this folded little piece of accordion fold. Now the first fold we're going to do is a triangle fold. So you just fold one half over, one end over to make a triangle. So we have that first triangle. Try to make it as straight as you can, because you're going to follow that fold all the way along. Then we're going to follow that straight edge and fold back on itself, not around it, but back along the triangle part this time, the diagonal part, back along the straight part. This is quite a tiny package. I could have done it a little bigger. Back again. Excuse my fingernails and fingers. I've already been doing this a few times, so I have a bit of dye on my fingers. This dye is fairly non-toxic and it's easy to wash off. Okay, so when you come to the end, if you have, oh, this one worked out perfectly, but often you'll have a little edge that's not the full triangle. I just tuck it in anyway, fold it over anyway. So now that I've got that, get a little piece. You can hold it with your fingers, but that gets pretty messy. So a little piece of maybe tweezers, or I have these big, which look kind of big on this tiny piece, but a piece of pliers, just to hold it tight while you insert it in the die. I just hold it in the middle. Now I'm going to dip it in yellow first. I usually start with the lightest color first. I often use yellow just because you always get some contrast to see the patterns well. So we're going to go in yellow. And this happens pretty quickly with this kind of paper. So I may have even dipped it in a bit long. And then once I've dipped it, I just have some newsprint on hand to press it to get the excess dye out. And it just kind of fixes that color in place. Now we are going to have a lot of yellow, but that's okay. I think I'll mix it and I'll put it in blue and dip it right out again. You do want them to mix, but you're trying to not have one color take over, but that often does happen, especially on a piece this tiny. And I just dipped it in red. So this, a triangle fold by, I'm going to pressing this a few times to get that excess. I mean, it fixes what's in there, but it also just stops the excess dye. So we have this lovely little colored triangle package. Now the paper's soaking wet, so you have to be very careful. Open it very gently. Make sure you've got all the folds unfolded. And you can see I'm not getting a ton of dye on my fingers because I've already pressed the excess out. And I'll probably just go rinse my hands off after each one so it doesn't build up too much. And then I'm going to open it carefully, like not the very end piece first, just get the middle opened first. And then you get this reveal of these amazing stained glass window kind of colors. You can play with this for a long time because it always looks different. You can use the same colors and the same fold and you still get a different effect depending on which colors spreading more, how they blend, which color you put on which corner of the fold. I don't know if I already said this, but if you have a package of rice paper, you can use it up pretty quickly just playing with this. I have to say that I have never used the rice paper for anything. I've always used the heavier paper to make things with. But when it's dry, it's still very soft. But you could make, say, a book cover, but I think you'd want to cover it with plastic or something, which would be a shame. Unless you glued it to a heavier paper, maybe that might work, because it'll get torn quite easily. Okay, there's our yellow, blue, and red primary color one. Very pretty. So I'm now going to, I always have some newsprint laid on the floor ready, and I'll just go put that on the newsprint to dry. So that's the triangle fold. Just to illustrate how different the same thing can be, these two are both the triangle fold. They both use yellow, blue, and turquoise. In this one, I used yellow and red as, I'll just give you an example. If you have, when you have a triangle, these two ends they're a different shape and the die goes in further. I was always doing this end as the last one, and it's a slightly different shape. So in this one, I did yellow, red, blue, and the blue just kind of didn't show much because it was the last one. And this one, I did the blue on this, sorry, I did yellow, blue, red. So I did red as the last point. And there's the other factor that each time you dye it, one color might go in more than another color. Just as an illustration how you could play and play with this forever and always get different patterns, even if you're using the same fold and the same colors. And that could be a frustrating one for you if you want to repeat something, because it's very difficult to repeat something exactly. So for the next fold, we start off the same. I'm going to do it a little narrower this time, more like 3/4 of an inch. Back on itself. And you can see I'm not too worried about these colors. They've soaked right into the paper. They're not actually staining anything. There's no big puddle of dye there. But if you want a fresh piece of paper underneath, you could do that. I'll just make the last fold a little bigger. Now this one is going to be a square fold, very simple. So you just repeat, just fold it back to make about a square size. Same, you make the fold the same as the width of the original fold to get a square. You could do a rectangle, but what you're also wanting is something small enough that when you dip the corners, unless you want a lot of white left, you want the dye to soak in enough to cover the whole shape. So the smaller little package, the easier that is. Okay, now we're going to do 4 colors, so I'm going to bring in purple. And I'm going to separate, I'm going to make sure the yellow and the purple are opposite, because they probably will mix a bit, but they will, they turn into kind of an ugly brown sometimes. So I'll do yellow first, as usual. I usually do yellow first. And get my, oh, I did get quite a bit of yellow in there. So I think our main colors are going to be yellow and purple. I'll just put that. I gotta press it to stop it. Now, when you press it, it does force it in a bit further, but it also takes out the excess so it stops spreading. I'm gonna put red on the other corner. And blue on the 4th corner. There's our new little package. The little packages are so cute. Nice intense colors. So I am getting a little dye on my fingers, but I find it very difficult to do this with gloves, especially with this paper. It's so delicate. And it'll come off, it'll wash off. It's not toxic dye really. So now again, I'm going to start trying to just separate it in the middle where there's a couple of layers of paper because it's so delicate. Ooh, I like the purple. I have another video which made me decide to do this. I've never made a video with this technique, probably because it's so messy. I'm not sure why. This is my first video with this. I just did a video of Annette Hollander's book on decorative papers, and she goes into this technique in a lot of detail. And many years ago, this is what started me on making, well, it gave me a technique to use that really worked well for making paper jewelry. One of the main things about this technique is it's double-sided. A lot of other techniques on paper are one-sided, but this works both ways. So if you're folding this into some little shapes, you don't have to worry about folding it and losing the color. I'm getting a bit of that. Oh, there we go. So that one is quite beautiful. I'm going to put this down so you can see it better. There. Very pretty. This one's quite wet, so I'm going to put this on the newsprint to dry. Okay, and we've done the triangle fold and the square fold, which are the two basic folds most people use. Over the years, I developed my own fold, cut this the wrong way, which is a little more complex, but it gives you, instead of kind of repeating shapes that are in a grid together, this one gives you a cascading kind of rows of the colors that really looks like, I mean, they all kind of look like stained glass windows, but this one really does. So I'm using a longer piece of paper because the fold takes up a little more length of paper to get very many layers. And I think I cut this the wrong way, but it's okay. Rice paper is so nice and thin and soft, it's always easy to fold. So we're doing our, as usual, starting with just a simple accordion fold, like a fan fold. It's like you're making a fan. And by all means, I played around to find this fold. There may be other folds out there that create other things, other patterns. It's so accessible to play with and just have some fun. Okay, so we've got a nice long piece. I think I'm going to cut that end off because I do want to start with a straight edge. You start with a triangle, folding forward. You've got your little triangle. Then instead of going back on this triangle, you're going to fold this under. As usual, we're going under, folding it as an accordion, like not folding it on. But you're going to make this shape, like a bigger triangle. So what I did was I had it like this. I turn that under and pull it back down so it's back in line with this line. So you're actually kind of making a bigger triangle. Then you turn it and you do the same thing. I did that on this fold. I turn it and I do it against this fold. You're using those lines to make sure you're getting the fold straight. So now I'm folding it again back, but in line with that to make another triangle. And then we're doing another one again. And in the end, you're having a square shape, but you've got all these folds. So we start over, now that we've got the square, we've done 4 triangles, I'm going to fold it back and just follow the previous shapes. Turn it, keep folding under, back. That's really all you can do. You wouldn't want to be folding it over it because it would be interfering with the shapes that are already there. So you keep going. You can see how this takes up one round takes up a longer piece of paper than just the triangle or the square fold. And at the end, I mean, if you want to, you could cut that off. You know what? I think I will cut it off. Sometimes when you have that little tiny piece, it just gets in the way when you're dipping it. So I think I am going to cut that off. There we go. So we've got the square and we're going to dip all 4 corners in. So in this one, you end up with a bigger piece. And sometimes it is a little more difficult to get the die to go in far enough, but it can work out. So we're going to use the yellow, purple, red, and blue. And now this time I am definitely going to separate the yellow and the purple. I mean, if you like brownish, if you want a kind of a mud color, you can let the purple and the yellow mix. Sometimes it's anyway, I like to keep the colors bright, so I try to keep purple and yellow away from each other. Also, red and green would be away from each other. I never really dip in green because I always end up with some green somewhere. But you could dip in green. You can dip in anything you want. And you could dip in kind of colors that are similar, so you wouldn't have as much contrast. You just have kind of a, see, it's just getting into the middle there. I'm going to press it again. That red really, I'm not sure why I keep using blue last, because blue is my favorite color. But it's, in these, it seems to always be ending up as green or purple. Now, I kind of looks like I pressed the yellow right out. I might have, or there might still be yellow left in the center. As I'm making the video, I guess if you could focus more, if I could focus more, I'd try to just dip and come right out, because I'm getting a bit of excess dye in there, but that's okay. So again, gently open this up. And see, there is some yellow left in there. You can never quite see what's inside while you're pressing the outside. Unfold, sort of fold there. Oh, that's where I cut the edge off. So you will end up with a little, not a straight edge on your paper, if that's important to you, if you cut that little extra edge off. I'm just going to put my glasses on for this. Don't want to rip it. Just gently. Undo the layers. You could try doing, you can try anything. You could try using just 2 colors, you know, but each color goes on opposite points. But I think it's not all that interesting. There is a further technique to controlling shapes, and I will do another video on that. But it's best to play first and get the idea down. And no matter what you do, it's not, if you're a person who likes control, it's not a good technique. It's not, it's more about surprise and experiment. And of course, you will get to the point where you know what certain colors do and you know what certain folds do. But even within that, there's always there's an element of surprise. Yeah, I'm having a hard time on doing this. I don't know if I got it just because it's a larger piece or it just got a little more wet. I don't want to wait till it dries a bit, because then I feel that the paper would actually start sticking together and it would rip even more easily as it dries. The dye would kind of act not like a glue, but the paper would stick together even more. I keep getting these extra little bits. It's that last piece, last fold that's difficult. I'm sure some of you may be thinking, oh, I wonder what that would be. Like, you're probably picturing colors, your favorite colors that you would like to put together, because not everybody likes primaries. I usually try to use primaries and contrasting colors to make the end result colorful. There, wow. So there you see that you're getting this cascade of the rows of colors rather than having them in a checkerboard kind of opposite fashion. That's how that pattern turns out. Oh boy. There you have it. Hope you've enjoyed these techniques, and I'll be doing more on what to do with the paper. It may take me a few weeks, but they should be up soon. Bye.